The sun hung low over General Santos City, casting a golden hue across the still compound. Inside the Pacquiao estate, silence reigned. The roar of the crowd, the clatter of gloves, and the frenzied cheers of the past. All of it felt like echoes trapped inside the walls of memory. Manny Pacquiao, now years into retirement, sat in the quiet of his home office, his fingers grazing the edges of an old framed photograph. It showed him mid-fight, gloves raised, eyes locked with his opponent, Deshaun Blitz Carter, a younger, leaner Manny, electrified by purpose. Across from him, Carter, brash and explosive, who had once claimed in a press conference that he would retire Manny in 3 rounds flat. It never happened. Their match became the stuff of boxing folklore, 12 brutal rounds, each man trading blows not just for titles, but for legacy. Carter had lost the bout on a unanimous decision, and while Manny's star continued to rise, Deshaun's flickered then faded. Manny often wondered what became of him, where the rage had gone, what happened to the man whose fists once thundered like war drums. A soft knock pulled Manny from the trance. One of his longtime security guards stood at the door, hat respectfully in hand, brow furrowed. "Sir," he said, hesitating, "there's a man at the gate. Says he knows you." Manny blinked. "What's his name?" "He said Deshaun Carter." The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Manny didn't respond right away. He looked down at the photo again, time peeling at the edges, as if trying to erase the past. Slowly, he rose. "Let him in." Outside, the sun's warmth did little to soften the tension in the air. By the front gate stood a man who could barely be recognized. Deshaun Carter was thinner, his skin drawn tightly over his cheekbones, his clothes faded and slightly oversized, as though they belonged to a man who once had more. He had no entourage, no bravado, no entourage or sunglasses, just a small duffel bag slung over his shoulder, and eyes heavy with the weight of years. Manny approached with caution, his eyes scanning the figure like a man assessing a shadow. "Deshaun?" he asked. Carter managed a smile, small, sheepish. "Didn't think you'd remember." "I remember everyone I bled with," Manny replied. There was a beat of silence. Birds chirped faintly in the background. "I'm not here to make trouble," Deshaun said quickly. I'm not even sure why I'm here, really. I guess I didn't know where else to go." Manny nodded slowly. He motioned toward the house. "Come inside." The house hadn't changed much over the years. Religious artifacts dotted the walls. Championship belts lined a glass case. There was a humble pride to it all, modest despite the grandeur. Deshaun walked in as if he didn't belong, his eyes darting from floor to ceiling, shoulders tight. "Water?" Manny asked. Deshaun nodded. "Thank you." They sat across from one another in the dining room. The tension was strange. 2 men who had once tried to knock each other unconscious, now sharing air and silence. Deshaun drank slowly, hands shaking slightly. Manny noticed. He didn't say anything. "I slept in an airport 2 nights ago," Deshaun finally said, breaking the stillness. "Couldn't afford a hotel. Sold the last of my stuff a month back. The bag I'm carrying, it's all I got left." Manny sat still, listening. "After our fight, things started falling apart," Deshaun continued. "Couple more bouts, lost 'em. Sponsors pulled out. Manager dropped me. Tried to go into coaching, but I was angry, real angry. Drank too much, yelled at the wrong people, got blacklisted." He paused. "Then came the divorce, then the eviction, then nothing." Manny leaned forward. "And your family?" "My son doesn't talk to me anymore. Can't blame him. I wasn't there when it counted." The confession hung heavy in the air. Manny's eyes softened. "What brought you here?" Deshaun looked down, ashamed. "Saw you on the news last week, giving scholarships, building houses, feeding families. I guess I just hoped maybe you'd remember me. Maybe you could look at me and not see a loser. Not see what I've become." Manny was quiet for a long time. He remembered that fight, the determination in Carter's eyes, the raw hunger. But he also remembered something most people missed, a look in Carter's eyes after the decision was read. It wasn't just the pain of losing, it was fear, like someone watching a future disappear before their eyes. "You're not a loser, Deshawn," Manny said quietly. "You're just knocked down." Deshawn laughed bitterly. "I've been down for 10 years. You're still breathing. That counts for something." For a while they sat in silence, the past hanging between them like a mist. Finally, Manny stood. "My wife made dinner. You should stay." Deshawn looked up, startled. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," Manny said. "It's dinner. You need food and we have plenty." Deshawn hesitated. Then, with a nod, he followed Manny to the kitchen, where Jinky Pacquiao offered him a warm plate of food and a smile that made him want to weep. He hadn't been shown kindness in so long that it almost hurt. That night, Deshawn was shown to the guest room. It was simple: clean bed, fresh linens, a window that opened to the courtyard where the sounds of chirping crickets played a gentle lullaby. Deshawn sat on the edge of the bed, his hands in his lap, looking around as if afraid to touch anything. Then he saw it, a Bible on the nightstand. He picked it up, held it for a moment, and then placed it back down gently. Meanwhile, Manny sat in his small prayer room, kneeling beneath a crucifix. His lips moved silently, not for himself, for Deshawn. He remembered all the times people had helped him when they didn't have to, the strangers who fed him, the trainer who believed in him when no one else did, the God he turned to after every fall. He remembered being poor, being mocked, being desperate. And he remembered the way Deshawn had fought, not with hatred, but with fire. The kind of fire that burns out when no one helps you tend it. The night moved slowly. In his room, Deshawn cried quietly. Not the angry tears of a fighter, but the quiet sobs of a man who had finally allowed himself to feel. He didn't know why Manny had taken him in. He didn't know what would come next, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. And for Manny Pacquiao, the man they called the People's Champion, this was no comeback story. This wasn't about headlines or image. This was something else entirely. It was a different kind of fight, one that didn't end in 12 rounds, one that didn't need an audience, one where offering a hand meant more than throwing a punch. Deshawn woke up to the unfamiliar softness of clean sheets. For a second, he didn't know where he was. The pale light creeping through the curtains, the quiet hum of morning. It was too peaceful, too far removed from the hard benches of airport terminals or the floor of a friend's borrowed apartment. He sat up slowly, almost afraid it was a dream that would vanish the second he moved. But no, this was real. He was still in Manny Pacquiao's house. He moved quietly through the hallway, careful not to disturb anyone, though the house was already stirring. The smell of garlic rice and longanisa drifted through the air, warm and inviting. Jinky greeted him with a soft, "Good morning," her voice as gentle as her eyes. Deshawn mumbled a thank you and sat down at the edge of the kitchen table. Manny entered a few minutes later, dressed in workout gear, his smile calm but knowing. "I'm heading to the gym," Manny said. "Come with me." Deshawn hesitated. "I don't want to impose." "You're not," Manny replied. "Besides, you could use a little sweat." The gym was tucked behind a church-run community center on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't glamorous, no flashing neon signs, no glossy sponsorships. But it was alive. Kids punched worn-out bags, jumped rope with intensity, mimicked footwork drills like gospel routines. Deshawn watched from the sidelines as Manny moved among them like a teacher in his element, correcting stances, encouraging form, offering advice not just on boxing, but on life. At first, Deshawn stayed seated, his arms folded, body stiff. He had walked into many gyms in his life, but this was different. There were no egos here, no pretense, just sweat and purpose. One of the younger boys, maybe 12 or 13, struggled to throw a proper jab. Manny called Deshawn over. "Show him," Manny said. "You had a good jab. Still do, I bet." Deshawn blinked. The kid looked up at him, eyes wide with admiration. Hesitantly, Deshawn stepped forward. He knelt beside the boy, adjusted his stance, tapped his elbow. "Keep it tight, straight line from your chin to his chin. Don't swing it, snap it." The boy tried again. "Better." Deshawn nodded. "There you go. Manny grinned. Told you. As the session wore on, Deshaun found himself loosening. The gym had a rhythm, a heartbeat, and he began to move with it. He held pads. He ran mitt drills. He even shouted encouragement. By the end of the day, his shirt was soaked, and something inside him, something long dormant, had started to wake up. That night, over dinner, he said little, but his eyes spoke louder than words. Over the next few days, a routine formed. Mornings at the gym, afternoons helping clean equipment or run drills, evenings spent quietly talking with Manny over coffee or tea. Deshaun shared stories he hadn't told anyone. About his father, a man who taught him how to fight before he learned how to read. About the night he first got arrested at 17. About the first time he stepped into a ring and felt for once like he belonged somewhere. One evening, Manny noticed Deshaun writing in a small spiral notebook. The pages were bent, the cover nearly torn off. When asked, Deshaun shrugged. Letters, he said, to my son. I write them but never send them. Why not? Deshaun looked away. What would I even say? Hey, I disappeared for 10 years, but I remember your birthday now. I missed his first match, his graduation, his life. Manny took a long breath. So did I sometimes. Boxing took me away more than once. You were fighting for your country. I was fighting for money and ego. We were both fighting for something, Manny replied. The ring doesn't care what reason you have. It just asks if you'll get back up. Deshaun didn't reply. Instead, he opened the notebook and read aloud one of the letters. Dear Marcus, I saw a boy today who reminded me of you. Left-handed, lanky, didn't tuck his chin. I wanted to correct him so bad it hurt, but I held back. I'm trying to be better, trying to be someone you could stand next to without shame. I don't expect forgiveness, but maybe one day you'll read this and know I was still thinking of you, even when I couldn't face myself. The room was quiet afterward. Manny reached across the table and placed a hand over Deshaun's. Send it, he said. Later that week, Manny took Deshaun to a local benefit event, a small fundraiser for underprivileged children in the area. The event was low-key, just a few tables, some speeches, and a crowd of locals. But when Manny took the mic, he introduced Deshaun with words that surprised even him. This man standing beside me, Manny said, was once one of my toughest opponents. But more than that, he's someone who knows what it means to fall. And to stand back up, I've fought many battles, so has he, and I'm honored to have him here, fighting now for the right things. Deshaun didn't know what to do with the applause. He stood awkwardly, half hiding behind the podium, but in that moment something shifted. He wasn't a disgrace. He wasn't a ghost. He was still a fighter. After the event, a local promoter approached him with a proposition, an opportunity to work with at-risk youth, running a small boxing program in a rundown gym on the outskirts of town. The pay wasn't much, but it was something, a beginning. Deshaun's hands trembled when he took the man's card. I'll think about it, he said, but Manny could already see the answer in his eyes. But progress is never a straight line. The next night, Deshaun disappeared. Manny noticed his absence after dinner. No note, no explanation, just gone. He called the guards, then checked the CCTV. It showed Deshaun leaving the compound quietly, duffel bag in hand. Hours later, Manny found him in a dimly lit bar near the city's harbor. Deshaun sat alone at the counter, staring at a glass of whiskey he hadn't touched. You gonna drink it? Manny asked, sitting beside him. Deshaun didn't look at him, thought about it. What stopped you? Deshaun stared into the amber liquid. I don't want to be that guy again. Then don't, Deshaun sighed. You make it sound easy. It's not, Manny said, but quitting never is. I don't even know who I am without the fight. You're someone who helped a kid throw his first real jab yesterday. That's who. Deshaun chuckled softly, the sound raw. You always talk like some preacher. Manny shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I've just been where you are. They sat in silence for a while. The bar was nearly empty. Outside, waves lapped against the pier. Why are you helping me? Deshaun finally asked. Manny turned to him. Because someone helped me once. Because when you were down, no one reached for you. I can't erase your mistakes, Deshaun, but I can remind you you're more than them. Deshaun didn't respond right away, but slowly he pushed the glass away. The next morning he returned to the gym, not as a guest, as a coach. The kids didn't treat him like a fallen star. They treated him like someone who mattered. They asked questions, listened when he spoke, smiled when he gave praise. And for the first time in years, Deshaun felt useful. He called the number on the card. "Yes," he said. "I want the job." When he told Manny later, the older man smiled and clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Good," he said. "Now let's see if you can still run 3 miles without dying." Deshaun groaned. "You're relentless." "You used to be too," Manny replied. Time to bring him back. But what neither man expected, what would change everything, was who walked into the gym 2 days later. A teenager, lanky and shy, stood by the door. He looked familiar, his face younger but unmistakable. Deshaun froze mid-drill, his body going stiff. "Marcus," he whispered. The boy didn't speak, just nodded. Deshaun stepped forward, 100 emotions flooding him at once. Regret, love, fear, hope. Marcus didn't run. He didn't smile. He just walked into his father's arms and stood there, letting the moment stretch and heal. No words were needed, just presence. And in that ring, with the ghosts of past fights echoing off the walls, Deshaun Carter finally won the only battle that had ever truly mattered. The days that followed were quiet, but filled with a kind of electricity that couldn't be explained, only felt. Deshaun arrived at the gym early every morning, earlier than anyone else. Sometimes before sunrise, when the world was still half asleep and the crickets hadn't yet surrendered to the sun, he would sweep the floors, check the bags, wrap tape on the kids' gloves. Not because anyone asked him to, but because it was his space now, his place. The ring wasn't just a canvas anymore, it was a classroom, a confessional, a new world where the past couldn't reach him unless he invited it in. Marcus began coming more often. He didn't say much, but he showed up. Some days he trained, shadowboxed silently in a corner. Other days he sat on the edge of the ring and just watched. But Deshaun didn't push. He let his son breathe on his own terms. He had learned the hard way that love, like trust, couldn't be forced. It had to be grown, watered with consistency, harvested with patience. So he waited. He offered guidance when asked. He corrected form, gave small nods of approval. He let his presence speak the words he didn't yet have the right to say. Manny observed it all with a quiet, satisfied smile. He didn't interfere. He didn't offer advice unless Deshaun asked. He simply trained in the background, always there, always moving like a man still fighting invisible battles of his own. They spoke less now, but deeper. Sometimes over late-night coffee they would sit outside under the stars and talk about the strange symmetry of life, about glory and grief, about how some men rise too fast and others fall too far before realizing the ground is where the rebuilding begins. Word of Deshaun's return began to spread, first in whispers, then in headlines. A local journalist wrote a story that went viral online. From knockout to comeback, Deshaun Carter finds redemption in Pacquiao's gym. It was raw, honest, filled with quotes Deshaun had hesitated to give, but was glad he had. The piece focused not on the comeback to fame, but the comeback to purpose, a far rarer and more meaningful fight. Soon, small media outlets picked it up, then national ones. People started reaching out, old fans, former rivals, even gym owners asking if he'd consider opening his own school. But Deshaun stayed grounded. The temptation to chase the spotlight again was real, intoxicating, but he had learned the cost of fame. He wasn't chasing lights anymore. He was chasing legacy. One morning, Manny handed Deshaun a letter, physical, hand-delivered, folded carefully in an envelope with Marcus's name scrawled on the front. Deshaun raised an eyebrow. "He left it in my office," Manny said simply. Inside, the letter was short. "I'm proud of what you're doing. I'm still figuring things out, but I wanted you to know that I see you trying. That means something. Let's keep working on it." Marcus Deshaun read it twice, then again. He didn't cry, not this time. The tears had already come and gone. What he felt now was quieter, deeper, like a heartbeat slowing after a sprint, like oxygen returning to lungs that had been tight for too long. From that point on, things began to accelerate. Deshawn was offered a permanent role overseeing the youth program. He was given space to design a curriculum, organize tournaments, mentor new trainers. He accepted it not with fanfare, but with quiet dignity. Every choice he made now came from a place of gratitude, not hunger. One afternoon, Manny approached him with a mischievous look on his face. "You still know how to move?" he asked. Deshawn chuckled. "You trying to get back in the ring with me?" Manny grinned. "Not for real. Just an exhibition for the kids, one last dance, no punches to the head, I promise." Deshawn thought for a moment. "You sure your ego can handle it when I drop you with a jab?" Manny laughed. "We'll see." The event was announced a week later. Pacquiao versus Carter legacy session. Not a fight, a moment, a symbol. The gym filled with cameras, but the heart of it remained pure. Kids lined the walls, watching in awe as two legends, one world famous, the other newly reborn, laced up their gloves again. They tapped gloves in the center of the ring, both grinning. For 2 rounds they moved, not with the speed of youth, but with the grace of men who had survived themselves. Their footwork was slower but smarter, their punches pulled but meaningful. It was like watching memory come to life, every motion a callback, every exchange a tribute. At the end of the session, they removed their gloves and raised each other's hands. The crowd cheered, but not because someone had won. They cheered because neither man had quit. Afterward, Deshawn stood with Marcus beside him, now holding mitts for a younger boy. Manny approached, and the three stood together for a photo, not for fame, but for record. A family of sorts, the kind made by sweat, forgiveness, and second chances. In the weeks that followed, Deshawn began writing again, not letters this time, but a memoir. Not about the title belts or the knockouts, but about the time between the glory and the recovery. The dark hallway where most men get lost. He wanted to put a light there, for someone else to find the door. One particular evening, Deshawn visited the church near the gym alone. He sat quietly in the back pew, the place nearly empty. A soft hymn played through the speakers. He bowed his head. He didn't pray for success, or for wealth, or even for forgiveness. He prayed for strength, the strength to keep showing up, to keep being better than he was yesterday, to never stop fighting, not for a belt, but for the right to look his son in the eyes and say, "I did everything I could." Later that night, back at the Pacquiao home, he stood on the same balcony where he had first doubted he belonged. Now he leaned on the railing, peaceful. Manny joined him, 2 cups of tea in hand. "You look lighter," Manny said. "I feel it," Deshawn replied. "You did the work. No one else could." Deshawn sipped the tea. "Funny, I came here with nothing but a bag of clothes and a broken past. Didn't think I'd leave with peace." "You're not leaving," Manny said, half smiling. "Not unless you want to. I think I'll stay. At least until these kids start landing real punches." They laughed. Below them, the gym's lights flickered on. Another class beginning, another round starting. Deshawn watched them gather. The next generation. Fighters, dreamers, survivors. He looked to Manny. "You know," he said, "you didn't have to let me in. Most people would have closed the door." Manny nodded, thoughtful. "But then I wouldn't have seen the real fight," he replied. Deshawn smiled. "This time," he said, "I think I won." And with that he turned back to the gym, ready. Not to fight, but to teach others how to rise. Because some victories don't come from the knockout. They come from getting back up and choosing to stay in the ring.